So I'll probably talk for about 10 minutes, and I'll turn it over to our guests here tonight. So as you know, the prairies looked a little bit rough this summer. There are a lot of reasons for that, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second here. But so we had some decisions to make. I had the original contractor come out, Stevens Erosion Control. They looked at it. We had another company come out, Sustainable Landscape Solutions. They looked at it, and then they consulted with each other, and also with our Hodge project manager, and they all came to the conclusion that it's not salvageable. So we're going to start over. We thought about possibly scrapping the whole thing and just doing sod, but we're committed to doing the prairie. We want to be good stewards of the environment here, and so the decision was made to go ahead and pursue a new plan to replant the prairie. So as you may recall from the, I think it's Acorns in April, Mark Siebold, who is the principal architect from Shy Battery, who designed this campus, and Holly Reed, the landscape architect, they wrote an article for that Acorns, and they talked about why the prairie, why they designed the campus this way. You know, preserving and enhancing the ecosystems within our urban fabric promotes resilient landscapes as one considers fluctuating weather patterns, increased flooding and wildlife challenges, such as decreased pollinator habitat. So in designing Oak Knoll East, the opportunity presented itself to integrate the building and site design in order to maximize views to green space, accommodate rainwater collection and infiltration, and replace plants that would provide habitat value. So in starting over, we decided to go with Sustainable Landscape Solutions. So because of the drought this summer, mismanagement, our soil quality, I think those are the reasons mostly why the prairie never took off this year. Sustainable specializes in prairie management. They're a local company, and they provide traditional and sustainable landscaping services in the Iowa City and Cedar Rapids area. So they presented a plan to me, and I'm going to summarize that plan here for you. So step one is to terminate the weeds that are currently overrunning the campus. So there's 2.5 acres of weed growth. They're going to spray it with an herbicide to kill it. 2 weeks after initial spray, if there's a need for a second one, they will do a second application. And then once that growth has been terminated, they're going to reseed everything. Along the east side here, we have the no-mow grass that also is going to be replaced, reseeded with the same thing, the eco no-mow grass. They're also going to put this in the soil. I don't know how to pronounce that, but that's going to go in there to promote a healthier, more sustained growth. And this was the same grass that was originally planted back there. So this is a campus map here, building 1, building 2, building 3. So what's going to be planted in our prairie areas? I got some arrows here indicating the areas I'm talking about here. So one type along this first southeast area and the west drive, they're going to plant a pollinator palooza mix, which attracts birds, butterflies, and other pollinators. This is kind of an example of what that would look like. Along the southwest part of the prairie here and this border with ACT, they're going to put an insectopia mix. This mix boasts a variety of wildflowers and grasses, chosen specifically to attract predatory and parasitoid insects, as well as spiders that feed on insect pests. The large area on the hill here in front, as you come in the driveway, and also by building 3 garage here between the dog park and building 3, that's going to be planted with a grand diversity mix. This is a showy mix, contains a variety of flowers blooming continuously, late spring until fall, including many bird and butterfly favorites. This is kind of an example of what that would look like. And then this is what the east side would look like. This is that no-mow grass. It's a drought-tolerant, low-maintenance eco-lawn that forms a soft carpet of grass. So when they plant, and all this work is going to be done before winter, actually. So they're going to herbicide it and then replant everything. So you'll probably see them out here within the next month through all this. They're going to plant an annual cover crop. They'll be added to provide color and growth during the first year of establishment. And they're also going to put more of this around in some of the other soil, because our soil, if you've ever looked at it closely, it's clay and a lot of rock, and it's left over from the construction. So one of our challenges is rebuilding that soil. And then as far as ongoing maintenance, so the first 2 to 3 years, they're going to mow for us. And it's at our request where they'll come out, they'll drive by and look, and if they think it needs mowed, they will mow it. They're going to do a high mow, so 6 to 8 inches, and then that's for weed control. As they drive by, if they happen to see some other weeds, they will come out and hand pull those. They're not going to use herbicides or anything once we get the weed stuff planted. Now, at times it's going to look a little rough the first couple of years until we get it fully established. And we are going to put signs up, so when visitors come in, they're going to know that they're not looking at a abandoned property with a bunch of weeds. It's actually a prairie in progress. So SLS, Sustainable Landscape, will put signs out, and then we're also having some signs made customized for Oakville. And on that sign, our wonderful social worker here, Sarah, she's an artist, and she painted a prairie painting for us, and we're going to use that on the sign. So this is what that looks like. Wow. And that is the plan. So we're not going to have a lot of time for questions tonight. If you do have any questions about the plan or concerns or comments, feel free to email or call me or stop by, and I'm happy to answer those. I will make a PDF copy of this PowerPoint slide, and I'll send it out with my Monday email, so you can have a copy of that, look at it closer. If I kind of went through this quickly tonight, it's a little bit hard to see on the screen. So I can do one question while we switch over the computer.
Did they consider any alternatives to herbicide in terms of preparing the soil for the new prairie?
They didn't indicate anything to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering whether, a good plowing and clearing would have taken care of enough of these without laying herbicide on it.
Sure. The plow or till, there's a lot of rock in that soil, so I think maybe they were concerned with tilling it with all that rock and how that would affect it. So Sean is the owner of Sean Pearl is the owner of Sustainable Landscapes, which he has a lot of experience. And so I met him here and he looked it over really closely, and so I think he has a good plan in place. I'll turn this over to Sarah here.
Hello, everybody. I am Sarah Neary. I am one of the 2 social workers here at Oak Knoll. I've met some of you, but I always appreciate having the opportunity to come over here and meet more of you, and I love the name tags. That's a great addition. But I'm here tonight to kind of introduce 2 friends of mine who introduced me to a movement that is in line with what Oak Knoll is trying to do in terms of making sustainable choices for the surroundings here. The movement that I'm talking about is Prompt for the Planet, and it's a little bit, there's practical ways that we can support and dialogue around the environment and climate crisis and things like that. What Prompt for the Planet does is encourage us to look at that issue through an artistic lens, or using our creative voices to give voice to the earth. And so Tricia Winchell and Dave Gould are going to present the story of how Prompt for the Planet came to be, the generations that have been involved in giving voice to the earth thus far, and then maybe how we can recruit this generation to join the conversation. So I think Dave will probably start us off. Help me welcome Dave Gould.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. By day I'm a professor at the University of Iowa, and I'll tell you right now, I'll kind of give away the ending of our story. You know, it begins with a single undergraduate student of mine who meets a poet, who together rally their peers, who unexpectedly find hope through a group of preschoolers that ultimately brings us here to meet with you. You know, I'd like to start with a question. You can kind of close your eyes, reflect, however you'd like to do it, but I'd like to just take a quick moment and picture from your life one of the more meaningful moments you've had in the natural world. It can be a lot of these. It can be something grand, a hike, a camping trip. It can also be something very simple. It can be on your porch watching a sunset with somebody you care about. I want you to think about, who you're with, what are you doing, where are you, and my hope is that these images will come easily, and that these are instances when we often feel most alive. This is the student I spoke about, Shannon Golden. She was a student of mine, and when I first met her, she was caught in what environmentalists often are now calling the Cassandras Dilemma. Cassandra, from Greek mythology, Cassandra is blessed with seeing the future. She can see where we're headed, what's going to happen, predict the future, but her gift is also accompanied with a counterbalancing curse, and that is that no one believes her prophecies, no one listens to her. And Shannon, who was dealing with a lot of angst over the type of world that she saw herself inheriting. Wasn't just one problem she saw, but I think, as she would say, it's a crisis stack. We're talking about the environment today, climate, things of that nature. You guys have sure been watching the news, the oil spill we are watching in California unfold, and the disaster that that's causing to the natural environment. But of course, the food inequity, the pandemic, all of those, threat to our democracy, all of those things were weighing on her. And when I met Shannon, she was also planning her capstone project, and her initial idea was to rally her peers around this collective plight, this bad hand of cards that she felt that she'd been dealt. I think the questions that she was asking in her generation, other students have expressed to me, are things like, why should I bother with more education? Why should I get too concerned about buying a house and establishing a life in a community? Why should I bring children into this world when they believe and aren't sure where it's all leading and how short-term it would be? I haven't said this often in public, but I'll share with you, her initial project title was even Generation Screwed. That's how she framed it. And I remember I was talking to another colleague, and I was kind of weighing, really how to guide and, mentor Shannon. And when I shared that with him, he was like taken back. He was alarmed. I remember and I wasn't quite sure. I mean, obviously I was troubled by Shannon's perspective, but what troubled him, especially with the idea of children, that that her and some of Shannon's classmates that was something they wouldn't even consider in the world that we're in. He said, Dave, when you lose that, you've lost hope. You've lost hope. And that's where we were at. And I think that there's a new word that's going around, a phrase. It's called eco-anxiety. It's something that a lot of people are dealing with, the notion of an anxiety over our environment, our environmental situation. And what we also know from research is that the dire statistics that we all have heard them, tend to have little effect, or the effect they have is not necessarily a positive one. It either turns people off. They turn off and just kind of don't want to listen anymore, or it scares them. Shannon, with a bit of encouragement, began to kind of change her perspective and began to think about reaching out to peers like herself that were interested in making a difference. first person on her list that she discovered was a woman named Amanda Gorman. And as you can see, back in that day, she needed to tell people who Amanda Gorman was. Amanda Gorman, this is a picture of Amanda when we met her. Actually, Amanda sent this to us. She was studying in Spain, so that's Amanda taking a selfie of herself on the street in Spain. But Amanda, to give a little of her backstory, she was prematurely born to a single mom, challenged with a speech impediment since childhood, and used writing to express herself. And while Amanda's first poem she shared with Shannon and me explored loneliness, she soon saw larger messages to carry her words. Feminism, race, and marginalization, to name just a few. And I remember her saying to Shannon and me that it's not enough for me to write, she said. I need to do right as well. I need to do right as well. In 2017, Amanda was named the first ever Youth Poet Laureate in the United States. The announcement came right when she was starting as a freshman at Harvard, and it was a rise in our country of a lot of social movements, the environment, climate, picking up momentum as well, and that gave her kind of a moral urgency with her writing. And Shannon and Amanda chatted. I was privy to be a part of those conversations, and what they decided is they decided to create a prompt for their generation. Amanda's appeal was pretty simple and direct. For young people everywhere, she wanted her generation to think of a natural element and speak in its voice, through pictures and words. That's what she wanted them to do. And this is what Amanda wrote. She wrote, "What would the fires raging in California say to the world? What would the wind from Hurricane Maria demolishing Puerto Rico sound like? What does freshly fallen rain on a staked and drought feel and taste like through poetry? What does freshly fallen rain on a staked and drought feel and taste like through poetry? Through love, through relief. Think of it," she wrote, "of it as creating an open letter from the planet." You may recognize the name Amanda because last January she was the poet that was asked to give a poem at President Biden's inauguration. Shannon took up Amanda's prompt and began to really work our Iowa City and beyond, classroom to classroom, community group to community group. This is her in a classroom. She would bring this cart just full of items, magazines and papers and patterns and things that people could cut and tape and put together. The idea of you don't necessarily need to be a great artist to draw, but you can cut and paste and make things and use their creativity. And students on our campus and beyond began to put prompts together. It wasn't just art. This is her giving one on writing. Now write without stopping for 5 minutes, and she would have people begin to write, and then from that, from some of the prompts that she would give them, gradually work to a piece that they would use. I brought just a few. You know, this is one here talking about the hurricane in Puerto Rico. Here are two others that she did as well. What was interesting, though, is that what started out as Shannon, Amanda, and a generation of largely 20-somethings kind of serendipitously connected with a group of preschoolers. And that's where my friend Tricia comes in.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, so while you and Shannon were doing this incredible work, I was working with a completely different population than the one you work with. I'm the director, but I'm also a teacher at Crusoe Preschool here in Iowa City. And the kids I work with, they have no problem popping out of bed in the morning. They wake up before their parents. They are a generation ready to go. They are a generation full of hope and innocence and joy. thoughts of themselves. So one day I saw a prompt for the planet come across my Facebook, and I thought, I can see that this is geared towards young adults, but I think the kids I work with might have something important to contribute as well, and might have a unique perspective. So I quickly went to the contact page to see if maybe these young kids could participate in some small way. And lo and behold, I found the email of my friend and neighbor, Dave, at the end of this project. And I'm so glad I did, because he connected me with Shannon right away. And Shannon came out to see us. So over here, this is the day Shannon came to Crusoe, and that was a very exciting day, because we get so excited when visitors come to see us. And this one seemed especially important because, Shannon was a college student and she needed our help. So that was really important. You can see we put all the tables together for this really important meeting. And what do all you grown-ups drink at your important meetings? Coffee. Preschoolers drink hot cocoa at their important meetings. So you can see they have cups of hot cocoa. She went around the table one by one and asked them what their favorite thing in nature was. And then she asked them to think what that item might say if it were to talk to them. And then she asked them if they would make art to go with those words. And this group of eager preschoolers said, yes, of course we'll do that. We're artists, we're gonna do it. And so Shannon left, they got busy working on their projects, but the inquisitive kids that they are asked the universal question that all kids ask over and over again. Why? Got it. Why? Why does Shannon want us to do this, and why is Shannon doing this? So we wrote Shannon an email and asked her why. And she said, because words are powerful, and you can share your powerful voice with things that don't have one. My voice is powerful became the rallying cry of these kids for this project. And they did share their powerful voices with the earth. They created artwork to go with their words, and being Crusoe Preschool, School of Music, we also, of course, created a song, our very own song called Listen to the Earth. And they got all those pieces ready, and Shannon came out one more time to collect all of our work for an event that was to take place at the Engler. Oh yeah, here's a few of our examples from our preschoolers. This one over here, this is Lucas, and so you can imagine all the busy people running around in that city down below, right? And he picked the rainbow, and the rainbow is saying, stop and sit back and take a rest and look at me. And so insightful for a little guy. And then this one is one of my favorites. She picked the grass, and the grass is saying, I'm scared of your foot because the weight is so strong. Please step gently on me. So something that I think she probably meant quite literal. She probably thought the grass was really scared of her foot, but I feel like it's such a, it's so insightful at the same time in our adult minds.
I'll just take a quick little bit to tell you where this all headed. And what happened is we were heading into Earth Day. And we decided initially the plan was it would all lead to Earth Day. We'd have a big celebration, and that would be the end of it. We did. We brought the newspapers were very interested. Those are my students. They had their prompts. We made videos. The newspapers covered what my students were interested in. We hosted a large gathering at both Merge and the Engler Theater. And one of them was my students and all the ideas and things that they had worked on. And then the second was this larger celebration at the Engler Theater with music and art and sculptures. Here's a couple of the sculptures that were made. These, I hope you can see, there's a bit of light on our picture, but this was a bird. I'll start by saying these were all made out of recycled materials. The student artists went to our landfills and dumps, and they found the materials that were being thrown out, so everything was made from trash. And this was a bird that literally hung from the roof, the rafters of the Engler Theater, and you can see what its insides are filled with. This was a remarkable piece. If you look close enough, I know we got some light glare on it, but the eyes are actually milk jugs, and it lit up clear, and out of it came the microphone that we used. This is on campus, and this is a whale, and you can see kind of a gutted whale that was right in front of the old Capitol. Amanda, for the occasion, she wrote a poem as well, and I won't take the time to read you it from start to finish, but I'll read you just a sense of it. She wrote, "There's a skinny black girl at the pier, over here almost daring to fly, 'cause she knows the ocean is both a graveyard and a spiritual dancing off the lip. Every word a wound, every word a way. She reaches amidst the crumbs of her pocket and fishes out breads of letters, cranes her neck at the flicker of the gull caught in flight, spotted, gray, great, riding the rails of a bald wind, black clapper, light-footed. She tosses poetry in arcs above the water like seeds, head thrown back, laughing hard, and waits."
So on the day of this great event, Dave had invited the preschoolers to come. This picture over here, Shannon included the preschoolers' art at the merge for people to come and look at, and that really validated their voices as young citizens on the earth as part of this project. You remember I told you we created a song. So we had this idea that we'd have a flash mob on that day. So we were at the play, we went to the merge, we looked at our artwork, we were playing, we were having great fun, and right on cue when they saw their music teacher, that's actually Dad, that's not him, but she's over here. When they saw their music teacher appear with the guitar, they all ran over, collected their homemade flags and banners that we had made for Earth Day, and started singing "Listen to the Earth" for anyone on the Ped Mall to hear. And then we paraded down the Ped Mall singing and marching. And then when we turned the corner to go to the Angler, we were met by Dave's students. They had formed this kind of tunnel. They were high-fiving our kids and cheering them on, and again, just really validating these young, powerful voices. So here we had two generations, one full of hope and innocence, like I said, and one dealing with skepticism and doubt. But they came together on this day for one common cause, and that was to share their voice and lend their voice to Earth. You can see Dave's students are holding their responses, and we're walking in, and I'm getting goosebumps right now just thinking about it, because it was a really magical moment to see these two generations together. We were invited into the Angler. Dave asked if they wanted to come up on stage, and they got a real good look at the sculptures that he had told you about. And I didn't know it at the time, but something was happening in those young minds and hearts as they gazed at the animals full of plastic. When we got back to school the next week, I thought, oh, that was a great project, we're done, it was May, I thought we were going to write out the school year. But I noticed spontaneously on the walls of the classroom, and I didn't see them being made, but I saw them on the walls, little signs that had plastic bags or straws or milk jugs drawn and crossed out, like, no straws, no bags. And this is Lucas. He came out of the art studio one day with this taped on his back, and it's kind of hard to see because it's upside down. He got it on himself upside down. But, so if you can kind of imagine that, that's a cup with a plastic cup with a straw, and, don't use that. Lucas came out with this sign on his back, and he said, "Trisha, I have this great idea. I have this sign on my back, and now everyone that walks behind me will see the message, and they will tell someone, and they will tell, and they will tell, and they will tell, and that will be the end." So, well, I thought the school year was over, and Lucas was showing me that it wasn't yet. We got busy telling people. I think that's the next slide. We wanted to tell people about how the kids wanted to tell people about how plastic was harming animals, and they just wanted people to use less of it. So we got busy telling. We told then Mayor Throckmorton, we told people on the sidewalks in the farmers market in Iowa City, we talked to business owners, and we even talked to the news. And people listened. And after all that telling and talking, Lucas felt like we were done. And I said, Lucas, how do you know this project is done? And he said, because people are listening. And then he said, Trisha, now that we're done with this, I know what our next job needs to be. And then he told me about a story he had heard on the news that was about a problem much bigger than plastic bags and plastic straws. And I just hugged him and I said, Lucas, we're gonna let the adults fix that one. And that's when I knew I needed to take that sign off of his back and put it on mine. Because Lucas was 4, and it was not his job, and it is not his job, to fix the problems, the big problems of this world that he did not create. So, to carry on his mission and the voice of Lucas and his friends, I created a nonprofit called the Lena Project. And the Lena Project is now teaming up with Dave and Prompt for the Planet, asking you to join Lucas in sharing your voice with the earth, in hopes that we can get people to listen to the earth.
I'd like to add one little bit, which is kind of why we're here. Started with college students, and certainly my students are on the front line. They are about ready to enter the world, and these will be the challenges that they'll face. They were inspired, as I said, by the hope and the innocence of youth. But I've been very interested over the years on intergenerational work. I taught at the senior college. I have worked out deals with our provost to bring seniors from the senior center into my class as actual students to give seats to our seniors. I did a project years ago called the Legacy Letter Project, where I had seniors in our community write what they know now they wish they'd have known in their 20s as letters to my students, and collected hundreds and hundreds of those. There's a metaphor which is about 1,500 years old, at least 1,500 years old, that talks about aging as a foreign country. Talks about the lack of understanding that we have, and an increasing lack of understanding between our generations. Until recently, I think my father's generation, we humans spent our time with people of all generations. As I mentioned, my dad grew up in a small town, and his whereabouts were monitored by just a network of older adults that he grew up in and known his entire life. I think there's a real value in the voices of all of our generations. And when Trish and I began to think about this, we realized that there was one group that we hadn't addressed, if we were going to continue and move forward with this. The second question that we often get asked is, this is all nice and good, but I'm not an artist, I'm not a writer. There's a lot better folks out there to do that. And I've really thought about how to answer that. And I think part of it is the answer that Shannon gave Tricia and her preschoolers, which is the notion that all of our voices matter to be added to the mix. And I think the line, and actually when Tricia and I were just kind of talking last night and kind of thinking what we were going to say, the line that I thought of is the power of the chorus. The power of the chorus. There are people who grab a mic and sing the leads, and those are the wonderful artists that are being trained at the university, the people like Sarah who have a lot of talent. But then there's the power of the chorus, the collective voices that we have together. And when you think about, is this something you would like to participate in, I would like you to think about it in that kind of term. The notion of how our voices sound when they're united. Tricia's archiving these websites, shows, publications. Prompt for the Press is something that is also connected to this, a local non-for-profit that does things with literature. I'm going to show you, and Sarah, I'm going to ask you to join us, because I'd like you to maybe tell the story. We've already spoken at the other Oaknell, and Sarah helped coordinate a much like what Shannon did, an opportunity to work on some pieces and do this. And this is one that came out of it. And you know, I'm going to let Sarah tell a little bit of the story, but my understanding is that this Sarah was a woman who, this is what she viewed out her window in memory of hers, correct?
Yeah, so we had a workshop at the main campus. Tricia was there, and Jennifer Colville, who is the director of Prompt Press, kind of facilitating the workshop. And we just, started talking about that question that Dave had brought up at the beginning is, is there a place in the natural world that is special to you, or, a profound memory? And the word just was talking about the mountains and how that is her kind of happy place. And so she set about just really trying to illustrate what it is about the mountains that is so important to her soul. And she did write a little something that goes along with these, but I think it was just restorative for her to work on this project and to spend time thinking about how she would give voice to that part of the planet that is so special to her.
And Sarah, since we got you up here, I'll let you hang on to the mic. Sarah, you saw the wonderful piece that they showed that you're talking about the prairie. Sarah's done one for the Prompt for the Planet as well, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit, Sarah, about this. I'm interested in, what was your inspiration? How did you come up with this? Why did you decide to participate? And, what did you learn about yourself in the process of doing this?
Well, this is a painting called Earth Dancer, and actually I had started it before I was involved with Prompt for the Planet as as a painting in honor of my when we met online on a dating app 8 years ago. His handle was Earth Dancer, which I thought was kind of corny at the time, but came to really love and appreciate about him because he was a lover of the earth and the environment, and taught me a lot about the woods and identifying things in the woods. And on a walk soon after he died with our dog, we found this fully intact, the dog and I, found this fully intact deer, this rack in the woods. And it's just so beautiful, and I sort of walked out of the woods that day like as if I were, in some kind of sacred procession with this thing that we had found. And so I just knew that I wanted to include that in the painting, because I felt like it was something that we would have appreciated. So in terms of thinking about wanting to submit this to Prompt for the Planet, I decided to pair this with a poem that I wrote. And I can read that for you. I don't think of myself as a poet by any means, so, again, just, I think it's important to just let your voice go where it wants to go when you're trying to express these things from your heart. And what I did in terms of coming up with the written piece was, I was thinking about Richard and all the things that he had taught me about the earth, and just, deepened my love and fascination and wonder and awe at the generosity of the planet with my first memory of having a profound moment in nature. And that first memory is when I was about 6 years old, and we had a cabin on a lake, but behind the cabin was it was along the Platte River, and there were these cottonwood trees, and I remember crunching my way through the woods by myself with my dog, and just hearing the rustling of the wind through the fall leaves. it just stopped me in my tracks. And I just have a very vivid memory of knowing on some level that that was an important place, that that was a sacred sound, and that it was important for me to listen and to make sure that I could stay quiet enough to hear that. And so, for some reason, I was connecting this piece with that memory. And Richard had told me some things that he wanted people to know. I mean, one point during his last days, he said, I wish I could, pass something on, some kind of wisdom on to people. And so I took down what he wrote, or what he said. And then I was thinking about what those cottonwoods were saying to me on that day. And so the poem that I wrote to go along with this piece is called Things Told to Me by the Dying. Because one of the things that I started to wonder is if that cottonwood, that little grouping of cottonwoods and that Platte River and that lake, if that wasn't already dying at that point when I was 6 years old. And what, how the earth is dying and what these, in that final, vulnerable, wise, sacred moment, what these things might be telling us. So, Things Told to Me by the Dying. This is from Richard. Slow down, he said. And then this next part is from the cottonwoods. Shh, you said, as your golden hearts stirred. Listen with dancing ears to the song of the trees. We cottonwoods have a story to tell. Don't try to be everywhere at once, he said. Stop, you said. Let your feet root to the earth. Stand in your bones while your knowing unfurls like a fern's leaf. This is important. Appreciate what is right in front of you, he said. Spend time at the water's edge, you said. Explore with your eyes, hands, and hearts the brink where so many live and so many die. What can we stand together on, he asked. This sacred ground, you replied. Let us twine our roots in that secret economy and promise it's never too late to fall in love. So I guess, the whole point of sharing this story with you and sharing some examples with you is really just to invite you to join the conversation. I think we all feel like we need your voices, your experience, the wisdom that you've accumulated in terms of just joining this conversation. What is it all for? I mean, we're hoping to generate some community events where ultimately, maybe by Earth Day next year, we can have an event, an art show, a reading where we all gather together, all the generations, and share what we've come up with. So I just want to offer that as an open invitation for you to participate in this initiative. If anyone is interested, we would love to host a workshop here at Oakville East, so that's easy enough for us to bring to you. So, you can always contact Steve or Lindsay to let me know if that's something that, we had 6 people last time, so it doesn't have to be a big, huge amount. The other thing is, I think Tricia has some material to hand out if you're interested in just where you can submit a response to the prompt on your own at the Prompt for the Planet website. So if you also need help kind of navigating that, I'm happy to help too.
Here, or
Yeah, maybe at the doors on the way out so people can grab them. So, any questions for any of us or especially these guys? Or comments?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Lucas is really only
I'm gonna come back and find you.
Lucas was really only four.
Yes, Lucas was really only
Oh my
four.
gosh, it's such wisdom.
Yeah.
Such a-
Yeah, isn't that amazing? And just so you know, one of my many jobs, but I worked with Tricia at Crusoe Preschool for probably 8 years back in the early 2000s. So I learned everything I know about art from hanging out with the 4-year-olds. So
Lucas was 4, yeah. He cared a lot about sea turtles. His grandpa lives in Florida and volunteers in rescuing sea turtles. So when he saw those sea animals with plastic, that wasn't even his response. When he did the work for Shannon, he was the one who picked Rainbow. But he went to the angler and he saw those animals. And the thing about Lucas is, Shannon told him his voice was powerful, right? And he believed that, and he was empowered, and he put that sign on his back, and people listened. We went around to restaurants in Iowa City, and 10 restaurants agreed to stop handing out plastic straws unless people wanted them or needed them. And so he believed he could change the world. He really did. And I think he still does, and he's probably 7 now. Any other questions?
well, thank you all so much for joining and listening to our story. And again, just let us know if you want to participate